Steinmeier's advice to Britain in his visit can be summed up in one line from Oasis and three quite serious messages underneath it. First, the Oasis riff. Quoting "Don't look back in anger" in the Royal Gallery is not just a cute cultural ref. He is saying quite very plainly that the Brexit decision is not going to be undone from Berlin, but that the emotional politics around it can be changed in London and Brussels. We decided not to say "stuck in those feelings" is a pointed contrast with the way British politics has remained trapped in 2016, litigating the referendum rather than designing the next phase. When he adds Cool Britannia is alive and likens UK-German relations to the Gallagher brothers reunion, he is flattering British soft power while gently suggesting that it is time for grown-up reconciliation after a very public family row. Second, his advice on Europe is practical rather than romantic. He doesn't ask for re-entry into the EU, he asks for youth mobility, easier school exchanges, simpler routes for students and interns in both directions. That is quite shrewd. It chimes in with British public opinion, which is much more relaxed about Erasmus-style programmes than about full political integration, and it speaks directly to the cohort who've lost out most from Brexit, who didn't vote for Brexit. The implicit warning is clear. If London does not repair these people-to-people links, the UK's next generation will drift away from lived familiarity with Europe, and the relationship will hollow out, regardless of any special partnership rhetoric from Downing Street. Third, Steinmeier couches everything in the language of shared democratic culture. "Britain taught us how to love freedom" is a remarkable sentence for a German head of state to deliver in Westminster. It is historically honest. Germany's post-war democracy was deliberately constructed with British parliamentary practice in mind, and it's also a deliberate appeal to British pride. He praises the Commons' legendary green benches and the noisy, sometimes brutal, but fundamentally rule-bound culture of debate. The subtext is that Britain belongs inside the family of liberal democracies, not only by treaty, but by temperament, and that is why he couples the Oasis lyric with Kipling's "Keep your head when all about are losing theirs," and the injunction "Keep calm and carry on." It's a reminder that British political culture is at its best when it's sober, resilient, and allergic to hysteria. Fourth, there is his warning about Russia. Here the tone hardens. He describes Russia's war on Ukraine as an assault, not just on a neighbour, but on the order that we built in Europe after the Second World War, a rules-based settlement that forbids changing borders by force. This is not merely a German view, it is the legal backbone of NATO and the EU. By framing it this way in Westminster, he is telling British MPs that whatever quarrels exist about tariffs, regulations, or migration, the strategic task is common: to resist a resurgent imperial mindset in Moscow that thrives on division in the West. When he says we must stand united, he is tying Britain's post-Brexit European role to the defence of that order. It is both flattery, Britain as teacher of freedom, and pressure. You cannot claim the tradition and then drift into indifference over Ukraine. Finally, the choreography of the visit reinforces the message. Wreaths at the grave of the unknown warrior and at Queen Elizabeth II's tomb, the forthcoming visit to the ruins of Coventry Cathedral mirrored by Charles's visit to bombed Hamburg, a banquet glittering with German cultural figures and a Christmas tree whose very presence owes itself to a German consort. All of that is carefully staged historical pedagogy. Arch enemies turned friends, total war turned into shared remembrance, rivalry turned into mutual dependence inside NATO. When he says our relations may have changed but our love remains, he is putting a sentimental gloss on a hard strategic reality. Britain and Germany need each other on energy, defence, sanctions, and the management of migration. So Steinmeier's advice to Britain is courteous but not vague. Stop obsessing with the referendum. Use your famous pragmatism to repair the damage. Above all, repair the damage for the young. Remember that your deepest political tradition is not sulking in splendid isolation, but arguing fiercely inside a community of democracies. And in a world of Putin, Trump, and resurgent authoritarianism, treat the UK-German relationship not as a nostalgic relic of cool Britannia, but as one of the pillars that still holds Europe together.